guys, it is April from Getting Hygge With It. Today we're here to do my June wrap up. June was a pretty good month. I didn't read a ton of books. I read 6 books and I DNF'd a book, sadly. But most of the books that I read were pretty amazing. I've got some 5-star, some 4-star here. I sadly do have a book that I didn't like, and I'm going to talk about that one as well. So let's get into it. So first up, I read The Bonesetter's Daughter by Amy Tan. Now, Amy Tan does this beautiful thing with all of her books that I've read, which, okay, there are only 2 books that I've read, but both of them, she really dives into mother and daughter relationships. So we always follow a Chinese family living in America. Usually the mothers have actually lived in China all of their lives and moved to America to make a new family. And then the daughters have been born here in America. And so there's always this culture, a bit of a culture shock that's explored in these books. In this book, we are following Ruth and her mother, Lu Ling. Now, half of the book, we're following Ruth kind of in present day, talking about her experience with her mom. And there's tension there because her mom lived in China all of her life and she hasn't fully adapted to being American, whatever that's supposed to mean. And Ruth finds her mom embarrassing sometimes, or she did at least as a child, and she's very frustrated with her mom in her adult life because her mom is always saying, oh, you don't make time for me, you know, you'll pay attention to your family, your friends, and work, but you make no time for me. And she's exploring her relationship with her mom as her mother is losing her memory a little bit, and she's exploring that. Now, we also go back in time and follow Lu Ling throughout her life in China. And it's amazing how Amy Tan can make one character completely annoying to begin with, and then as you learn about them and learn about their lives, why they do the things they do, you feel really bad and you fall in love with them. And I felt that way again here with The Bonesetter's Daughter. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. If you enjoy contemporary fiction and you enjoy historical fiction, this is a beautiful marriage of the two, and I highly recommend it. I also read The Trouble with Goats and Sheep. This is a book about a neighborhood. One of the women in the neighborhood has gone missing, and we follow Grace and Tilly, who are, I believe, 10-year-old or 11-year-old girls. And they decide they're going to try and find this missing neighbor. And while they're at it, they're also going to find God. This is an amazing growing up story, but it's also a bit of a mystery, which I really liked. This bounces back and forth between, I think, 1976 and 1967, and we bounced back and forth, and I was so sucked in. This is funny at times, really heartbreaking at times, and so we're mostly following these 2 young girls, but we also dip in and out of all of the other neighbors in this little cul-de-sac, basically, and we discover what's going on in the homes of all of these neighbors. I really enjoyed this. I gave this book a 4 out of 5, and I highly recommend it. I will be reading 3 Things About Elsie, also by Joanna Cannon, very soon because I loved this book so much. I also read I Am by Maggie O'Farrell. I don't have the physical copy here because I've already lent it out to one of my coworkers and dear friend Sandra because I just loved it so much. This is a memoir about Maggie O'Farrell's 17 brushes with death. Some of these brushes with death were so scary. The first story is genuinely like ooh, you're sitting on the edge of your seat and you're so nervous for her. You know she survives because she's here to write the tale, but I was genuinely scared. Some of them are heartbreaking. One of them was very moving to me because it's about a miscarriage and just really spoke to me. Others talk about her childhood illnesses and the tales she has from all of the traveling that she did. Maggie O'Farrell can write, and this was my first Maggie O'Farrell. It will not be my last. Now, she has only written one nonfiction, and this is it. The rest that she's written is fiction, and so I'm really eager to sit down with more Maggie O'Farrell because this was a 5-star read. If you guys have been watching my channel a lot lately, you'll know how much I've gone on and on and on about I am because it's that good. I also read The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty. Blatty, it doesn't matter. This book is is it the first exorcism book? I think it is, and that's why it was so popular, and it was really good. I really personally enjoyed it, and I had already watched the movie like 2 or 3 times over the course of my life. In this book, we follow an actress that lives in Hollywood and her daughter named Reagan. Now, Reagan becomes possessed, and she needs to reach out to the Catholic Church to get some help. I will say that all of the scenes with Reagan in it were petrifying. Her dialogue, on point. All of the creepy things she did, I loved every second of that. However, I really did struggle with some of the other dialogue. The dialogue of the mother, I think her name was Sharon, if I'm not mistaken. She just kept saying really annoying things throughout the book. Like, what doing? Like, she'd come home after being out running an errand or something, and meanwhile her daughter is being possessed and is getting worse and worse and worse, and she'll come home and be like, what doing? Like, what does what doing even mean? It drove me a little crazy. However, because of Reagan and all of the scenes with Reagan, I couldn't put it down. You needed to know what happened to Reagan. So I gave it 4 stars. I really do recommend it if you are into horror and you like possession stories. I mean, this is a classic, so I would recommend it. I just finished reading this morning the Book of Negroes by Lawrence Hill. This is such a good book. This is a beautiful, brilliant book by a Canadian author. In this book, we are following Aminata as an older woman. She is sitting down to tell the story of her life. She lived in Africa until she was snatched away by slave traders, made to march to the ocean, and sent on a ship to America. Now this bounces all over the place. There are portions in Africa, America, Canada, in Nova Scotia, also back to Africa again, and England. And so she goes all over the place in this book, and it's the story of her life as a slave trying to escape slavery. It is poignant and beautiful. And Aminata is one of those characters that will stay with you for a very long time. I loved her. What a story of resilience. I mean, this year I have been trying to pick up stories about resilience, and I felt that way with this book. She had great loss in her life, and yet she was always able to stand on her own 2 feet and really maintain her character. It's amazing. I loved this book. Please go and read this. If you liked Homegoing, this is a wonderful book to pick up. If you liked The Kitchen House, this is a wonderful book to pick up. Out of all of the books here, except I Am. This and I Am are the books that I would most recommend. I would be very, very surprised if both of those books actually didn't end up on my best of 2018. I would be shocked. So loved it. Now 2 more books, one I read, one I DNF'd. So the last book that I read that I want to talk to you about is Behind Her Eyes. I am actually going to have a whole separate review for you guys coming Thursday. I think it's Thursday. The next video that you get from me is going to be my review of Behind Her Eyes. I didn't like it, and I'm going to explain why in that video. And I genuinely felt kind of guilty because so many of you really, really loved this book. And, you know, for some of you, it was your favorite book that you've read this year so far. And so I really thought that I should do a separate review to kind of explain why I didn't like it, why this wasn't for me. Yeah, so I'm not going to say much about that here because I prefer if you would watch that video, because I think I can really explain my why. Okay, and then the book that I DNF'd was really shocking to me. I DNF'd Red Clocks. Now this has been a favorite of a lot of people. This is a dystopian book about a time in which abortion, IVF, and adoption is very regulated. So abortion and IVF are entirely going to be illegal, and adoption will only be available to couples, I think same-sex couples or couples, so single women at least, single people at least, cannot adopt. And so we're following characters just before this law is about to come into place, and we're following a woman who is single and trying to adopt and also trying to do IVF at the same time. We're following a high school student who finds out that she's pregnant and would like to get an abortion. We follow a few people, and I just couldn't get into it. I really tried to get into it. I think I got like well over 100 pages in, and I was just kind of bored, if I'm being honest. And you'd think that something like this, because I mean, we are going to be going for IVF, I've been struggling with infertility, you'd think that this would be like my dystopia. But I think maybe because it was, I don't know what it was. It just didn't click with me, and I didn't want to force it to. You know when you pick up a book and you're like, oh, I'm going to like this because this is going to mean a lot to me. It's so close to my situation. I think that's what happened with this. I just thought for sure I'm going to like it. And so when it wasn't up to par, I was disappointed, but you can't force it, right? So I just DNF'd it. No regrets. So yes, those are all of the books that I read this June. Let me know in the comments below what your favorite book was that you read this June. I would love to know, and I will talk to you later. Bye, guys.